The glittering lights of New York City have always acted as a beacon for dreamers, artists, and those searching for a stage where their deepest ambitions can finally take root and flourish. Amidst the relentless hum of the metropolis, the historic theater district stands as a sanctuary of storytelling, a place where the barrier between the performer and the audience dissolves into pure shared emotion. It is within these hallowed spaces that careers are forged, where the echoes of theatrical legends linger in the rafters, and where a new generation of talent comes to test their mettle against the highest standards of live performance. Entering this arena is never a casual endeavor, as the demanding nature of the stage requires an absolute surrender to the craft, a willingness to be completely vulnerable in front of hundreds of strangers night after night. For an artist who has spent years navigating the highly controlled, polished world of television and studio recordings, stepping onto an off-Broadway stage represents both a profound homecoming and a terrifying leap into the unknown. The transition demands a reinvention of technique, a revival of long-dormant creative instincts, and an embrace of the beautiful unpredictability that only live theater can provide, as the winter wind sweeps through the concrete canyons of Manhattan on a bitterly cold Thursday evening. The warmth of the Westside Theatre lobby offers a stark and welcoming contrast to the freezing elements outside. Inside this intimate venue, a palpable sense of anticipation fills the air, thick with the chatter of eager theatergoers and the distinct rustic aroma of old wood and stage velvet. Fans of all ages drift in and out of the box office, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the display cases, hoping to catch a glimpse of magic or secure a last-minute ticket to a sold-out show. One particularly ecstatic theater enthusiast celebrates a stroke of pure luck, having just scored a coveted front-row seat for an upcoming performance. Their excitement serving as a testament to the undeniable drawing power of the production currently occupying the stage. This theater, tucked away from the chaotic neon rush of Times Square, has become the temporary home for a classic piece of American musical theater history. A darkly comedic masterpiece that has captivated audiences for decades with its blend of catchy rock and roll melodies and sinister narrative twists. To step inside this space is to step into a rich tradition of storytelling, where the stakes are incredibly high and every single line delivered carries the weight of decades of artistic legacy. A few minutes later, navigating through the quiet, empty corridors of the auditorium just an hour before the evening performance is scheduled to begin, the true scale of the theatrical endeavor becomes clear. The rows of velvet seats sit in patient silence, waiting for the crowd that will soon fill them with energy, laughter, and applause. Down near the front row, bathed in the soft ambient work lights of the stage, sits a young man quietly sipping hot tea, grounding himself before the nightly transformation begins. This is Joshua Bassett, an artist who has spent the opening months of the year navigating a whirlwind of creative milestones, kicking off his professional schedule at an absolute breakneck speed. From his highly anticipated debut on the legendary New York stage to the recent announcement of his upcoming deeply personal literary project, he has firmly established himself as a multifaceted force in the modern entertainment landscape. Meeting him in this quiet moment of pre-show reflection reveals a stark contrast to the massive stadium crowds and screaming fans that have defined much of his recent career, offering an intimate glimpse into the mind of a performer who is constantly searching for deeper artistic truth, greeting his guest with a natural, effortless charisma that instantly fills the cavernous room. The young actor exudes a genuine warmth that makes the grand setting feel remarkably conversational and grounded. For a split second, the sheer magnetic presence of the performer is enough to make anyone lose their train of thought, evoking a classic pop culture moment of comedic mental static where everything else simply fades into the background. Settling comfortably onto the very edge of the wooden stage, swinging his legs over the apron, he prepares to dive into an expansive conversation that spans the entirety of his creative evolution. The dialogue moves fluidly from his initial steps back into the demanding world of live theater to a thoughtful retrospective on his debut musical releases, eventually leading toward the creation of his most vulnerable and terrifying piece of written work to date. It is a moment of rare stillness in a life that has been defined by rapid acceleration, providing a perfect backdrop to explore what happens when a young artist decides to look backward at his roots in order to find the strength to move forward into uncharted territory. The journey back to the stage is never a simple path for those who have tasted the massive global reach of screen success, as the two mediums require entirely different artistic muscles and mental endurance. For those who wish to follow this captivating journey behind the scenes and stay updated on the most exclusive interviews with your favorite artists, please take a quick moment to subscribe to our channel and join our growing community of entertainment enthusiasts. Returning to the immediate, unfiltered feedback of a live audience means stepping away from the safety net of multiple takes, editing bays, and digital pitch correction, trading them for the raw thrill of living entirely in the present moment. The theater demands a specific type of discipline, a hyper-awareness of one's physical space, and a deep reliance on the ensemble cast rushing through the wings in the darkness. It is an environment where mistakes cannot be hidden, where a forgotten line or a missed cue must be instantly absorbed and spun into gold before the audience even realizes anything has gone awry. For a performer re-entering this world after a decade-long hiatus, the experience is both an exhilarating homecoming and a rigorous reminder of the strict training that initially shaped their creative identity during their formative years. As the conversation deepens under the quiet stage lights, the young performer openly reflects on the early days of this theatrical run, candidly admitting to the intense waves of anxiety that accompanied his first steps back into the rehearsal room. Growing up in the community theater circuit, he had been conditioned by strict old-school instructors who frequently warned their pupils that the professional world would be unforgiving, filled with harsh criticism and demanding expectations. This lingering psychological conditioning created a profound sense of pressure during the initial phases of production, causing moments of internal panic whenever a line slipped from memory during grueling rehearsal sessions. However, the modern theatrical community proved to be a far cry from those childhood fears, offering instead a deeply supportive, compassionate environment where the veteran cast members immediately rallied around him with patience and encouragement. This profound sense of collective unity and shared purpose is something uniquely distinct to the stage world, a tight-knit family dynamic born from sharing cramped dressing rooms, navigating narrow backstage hallways, and relying entirely on one another to bring a complex story to life every single night without fail. There are no massive egos allowed in this melting pot of creative energy. Instead, there is only a beautiful, shared dedication to the craft that allows every performer to feel safe enough to truly push their boundaries and refine their character with each passing twilight. The delicate art of theatrical storytelling relies heavily on the profound connection between the performer and the written text, a bond that becomes even more critical when reviving a production deeply embedded in the cultural zeitgeist. When an artist takes on an iconic narrative that has been celebrated for generations, they are not merely memorizing dialogue and choreography, they are stepping into a historical lineage, inheriting a character that audiences already know, love, and hold precise expectations for. The show currently serving as the backdrop for this creative rebirth is none other than the legendary musical masterpiece centered around a quirky, down-on-his-luck floral assistant and a mysterious, bloodthirsty plant with an insatiable appetite for human flesh. It is a brilliant blend of dark comedy, science fiction, and heartfelt romance, requiring the lead actor to navigate an incredibly complex emotional landscape that shifts rapidly from broad slapstick humor to genuine, bone-chilling desperation. Entering this specific creative world presents an extraordinary challenge, as the character of Seymour Krelborn demands an absolute dissolution of vanity, forcing the performer to shed any lingering remnants of a polished Hollywood persona in order to fully embody a deeply insecure, socially awkward, and desperately lonely young man trapped in the bleak environment of Skid Row. Interestingly enough, entering this legendary production did not come from a lifelong obsession with the piece, but rather through a sudden, unexpected professional offer that arrived out of the blue. At the time the opportunity presented itself, the young actor had actually never seen a full production of the show, knowing it primarily through its massive reputation and the fact that it happened to be one of his oldest sister's absolute favorite theatrical works of all time. Of course, like anyone who has ever spent time participating in youth theater or singing around a piano, he was intimately familiar with the sweeping, show-stopping anthem that serves as the emotional anchor of the entire second act, a song that practically every theater kid in the world can recite by heart. This lack of deep familiarity with the full narrative arc actually provided a uniquely fresh canvas, allowing him to approach the script without the burden of imitation, discovering the nuances of the character organically through the text, rather than replicating the performances of the legendary actors who had occupied the role in decades past. Upon diving into the material, he found himself utterly captivated by the staggering emotional range required by the role. Recognizing it as a brilliant psychological study of a tragic figure whose desperate search for love and validation slowly leads him down a dark and irreversible path of moral decay, the true fascination of playing a character like Seymour lies within that gradual, agonizing psychological unspooling, a narrative trajectory that mirrors some of the most compelling dramatic figures in modern television history. At the beginning of the story, the character is driven by incredibly decent, innocent intentions, desiring nothing more than to secure the safety, happiness, and affection of his co-worker, a woman who has endured endless hardship and mistreatment in her own life. However, as the sinister influence of the exotic plant begins to take hold, offering him fame, fortune, and the keys to his wildest dreams, the lines between what is morally acceptable and what is utterly monstrous begin to blur in increasingly terrifying ways. The actor describes this specific journey as a fascinating roller coaster to navigate on stage every evening, comparing the tragic descent to a Walter White-type character development, where a seemingly harmless, gentle soul gradually compromises their integrity piece by piece until they are completely unrecognizable to themselves. This slow-burning chaos provides an incredible playground for a dramatic actor, allowing them to lean into the bizarre, awkward, and quirky physical comedy of the early scenes while gradually building the underlying tension and psychological dread that dominates the final act of the performance within the intricate architecture of the show. There are specific moments that the cast members look forward to with intense anticipation each night, sequences where the theatrical mechanics and the emotional stakes align perfectly to create absolute stage magic. Without spoiling the specific narrative twists for those rare audience members who have not yet witnessed the dark progression of the plot, there is a pivotal, highly charged altercation that occurs backstage and on the scenic landing. A moment of intense physical and emotional conflict that allows an actor to fully commit to the raw, visceral reality of the character's desperation. Beyond these high-intensity dramatic turning points, the nightly performance offers moments of pure, transcendent musical beauty, most notably during the performance of the show's signature romantic duet. This iconic musical number provides a front-row seat to the staggering brilliance of his co-star, Joy Woods, an extraordinary theatrical powerhouse whose immense vocal talent and deep emotional intelligence leave both the audience and her fellow performers in a state of absolute amazement evening after evening. Sitting on that stage, watching a peer deliver a masterclass in vocal performance serves as a constant source of artistic inspiration and a powerful reminder of the incredible caliber of talent defining the New York theater scene. The collaborative process between these two performers was forged under remarkably unique and high the sure circumstances, as the fast-paced nature of professional theatrical replacements rarely allows for the luxury of an extended months-long rehearsal period. Because his co-star had already successfully navigated the production for an extended period and was managing an incredibly demanding professional schedule leading up to his first official performance, their actual time together in the rehearsal studio was shockingly brief. During those early days of preparation, the young actor recalls being utterly consumed by a profound sense of insecurity, feeling like a fragile shell of himself as he struggled to find his footing in an entirely unfamiliar artistic environment. He was completely freaked out by the sheer magnitude of the task before him, overanalyzing every movement and taking the material with such a rigid, intense seriousness that it threatened to paralyze his creative instincts. It was during this critical moment of self-doubt that his leading lady stepped into the room, exuding a radiant, effortless confidence and a playful sense of joy that immediately transformed the heavy atmosphere of the rehearsal space. Her presence served as a vital wake-up call, gently reminding the anxious performer that despite the historical legacy and the immense pressure of the New York stage, the ultimate goal of theater is to find joy, discovery, and genuine human connection within the work. She helped him realize that he had allowed his anxiety to strip away the fun of the creative process, urging him to loosen his grip, relax his mind, and trust that the memorized lines and technical blocking would eventually settle into his muscle memory naturally. Her incredible support and light-hearted approach provided the perfect reintroduction to the theater world, giving him the permission he desperately needed to stop striving for an impossible standard of perfection and instead start playing, experimenting, and enjoying the magnificent journey of bringing a classic character to life. This profound creative partnership not only salvaged his confidence during those high-stress rehearsal sessions, but also injected a vibrant, spontaneous energy into their nightly performances, ensuring that their chemistry on stage remains completely electric, unpredictable, and deeply moving for the audiences filling the Westside Theatre. The fascinating evolution of a creative mind rarely confines itself to a single artistic medium, as the deep impulses that drive a performer to step onto a theatrical stage are often the exact same forces that compel them to pick up an instrument or pour their soul onto a blank piece of paper. As the conversations inside the historic Westside Theatre shift away from the immediate world of character work and backstage dynamics, the broader landscape of Joshua Bassett's artistic journey comes into sharp focus. For an artist who has captured the hearts of millions through his songwriting, looking back at past musical milestones provides a profound sense of perspective on just how much life has changed in a remarkably short period of time. It has been roughly a year and a half since the release of his landmark debut studio album, a major creative turning point that arrived in the middle of 2024 to widespread critical acclaim and an incredibly deep, emotional reception from fans across the globe. When confronted with the sheer velocity of time, the young musician reacts with genuine amazement, realizing how quickly the whirlwind of touring, promoting, and evolving can distort one's perception of the past. Make a major life milestone feel like both yesterday and a lifetime ago. Reflecting deeply on that monumental debut record, the singer finds the greatest sense of artistic pride not in the commercial metrics or chart positions, but in the raw, unfiltered vulnerability of the specific tracks that challenged his songwriting abilities. One particular song that continues to hold an incredibly special place in his heart is a deeply introspective track that explores the complex, highly nuanced emotional reality of growing up, changing, and suddenly struggling to recognize the person staring back at you in the mirror. There is a profound, universal melancholy in that realization, a feeling that resonates deeply with an entire generation of listeners who are navigating their own confusing transitions into adulthood. The ultimate validation of this work comes when fans take those deeply personal lyrics and weave them permanently into the fabric of their own lives, sometimes even getting tattoos of poignant phrases meant to remind them of how far they have truly come through their darkest struggles. Other tracks continue to stand out as personal favorites, especially songs where the lyrics carry a heavy emotional weight, proving that any time a piece of poetry can provide a new perspective, a sense of hope, or a comforting embrace to a stranger, it becomes a treasure far greater than any industry accolade. This intricate approach to songwriting is further elevated by a brilliant use of subtle narrative threads and clever lyrical connectivity, a technique that delights dedicated listeners who pay close attention to the overarching story being told across multiple musical eras. Throughout his discography, the artist masterfully drops hidden details and interconnected references, weaving titles and recurring motifs into the fabric of completely different tracks to create a rich, cohesive musical universe. This artistic depth was beautifully demonstrated once again in a stunning standalone single released in 2025, a track that instantly captivated audiences with its ethereal atmosphere and deeply romantic narrative foundation. The inspiration for this hauntingly beautiful piece of music was born from an incredibly ordinary, grounded human experience, originating right after a couple of casual dates, when the songwriter was simply chatting with a close friend about the unpredictable nature of romance. He realized that the absolute best romantic connections are the ones that completely catch you off guard, the sudden infatuations that you never see coming and could never possibly plan for, driven by that immediate surge of creative inspiration. He picked up an acoustic guitar, turned on a simple voice memo recorder on his phone, and allowed the lyrics to pour out of him completely unfiltered, capturing the raw essence of the feeling without overthinking a single syllable. The recording was forgotten for months amidst his chaotic schedule, buried deep within his phone until a flight to a recording session in Nashville forced him to scroll through his old voice notes in search of a creative spark to bring into the studio the next day. Recognizing the undeniable magic hidden within that rough acoustic sketch, he teamed up with an incredibly instinctive producer to bring the track to life. What followed was one of those rare, truly magical days in the studio where the creative energy flows effortlessly, allowing the entire arrangement to come together perfectly in a single afternoon. The final version that listeners hear on the official release is remarkably almost entirely that original first-day demo, preserving the raw, spontaneous intimacy of the moment with only a few minor structural adjustments made to the bridge before it was mastered and sent out into the world, while music will always remain an essential pillar of his creative identity. His current mental focus has shifted toward an entirely new and terrifying frontier, the upcoming publication of his highly anticipated literary debut. Writing a book represents an unprecedented level of vulnerability for the young artist, who has openly described the project as his most terrifying piece of work to date due to the unfiltered honesty required by the long-form written word. To truly understand the origin of this book, one must look closely at his highly unconventional upbringing. A childhood defined by a complete lack of traditional schooling that allowed him to spend his formative years entirely immersed in creative exploration. At the age of 14, after being grounded and stripped of his usual distractions, he took it upon himself to learn how to play the guitar, eventually teaching himself the piano and the ukulele as well, using music as his primary language to navigate the world. His very first attempt at songwriting was a sweet, innocent endeavor designed to ask a girl to a high school dance, a small moment that unwittingly set the stage for a lifetime of professional storytelling by the time he's turned 16. He was bravely making the journey up to the chaotic streets of Los Angeles, frequently living out of his car and sneaking into high-profile Hollywood events where he absolutely did not belong, masterfully pretending that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. This early exposure to the entertainment industry led to a profound psychological revelation as he quickly realized that even the most famous successful people in the room often feel like complete frauds, navigating their careers with a collective sense of imposter syndrome. This profound realization reached a critical breaking point during the filming of the first season of his breakout television series, when the immense pressure of his sudden fame triggered a massive mental breakdown just one day before shooting the grand finale. Sensing his leading actor's deep distress, the brilliant showrunner pulled him aside for a private conversation. Listening intently as the young star confessed his terrifying fear that he was an absolute fraud who had no idea what he was doing on a professional set. In a beautiful moment of solidarity, the showrunner admitted that he woke up every single morning harboring the exact same fear, worrying that the crew would finally discover that he was completely figuring it out as he went along. This transformative conversation laid the thematic foundation for the book's brilliant title, a direct nod to the idea that no matter how much success, fame, or validation an individual achieves, everyone is ultimately just a beginner trying to navigate the complexities of existence. The book operates as a powerful philosophical guide split into two distinct, beautifully realized halves, with the first section serving as an inspiring, high-energy rallying cry, encouraging readers to boldly chase their wildest ambitions and believe in their own infinite potential. However, the second half of the narrative takes a much deeper, more contemplative turn, examining the sobering reality that external success, professional accolades, and global fame can never truly fulfill the deep spiritual hunger that exists on the inside of a human being. The profound real-world impact of this message was proven when an early draft of the manuscript was read by a close friend's father, a successful attorney who was so deeply moved by the book's call for authentic living that he walked into his office and permanently quit his legal career that very same day to pursue his true passion, this incredible literary journey, combined with his current triumphant theatrical run, serves as a beautiful testament to an artist who refuses to be confined by boundaries, constantly evolving while remaining deeply connected to the nostalgic roots that started it all. As the cultural calendar marks the milestone 20th anniversary of the legendary film franchise that paved the way for his own television success, it is clear that the spirit of musical theater runs deeper in his veins than ever before. Audiences wishing to witness this extraordinary chapter of his career have only a limited time remaining, as his spellbinding run on the New York stage is drawing to a close, paving the way for a highly anticipated transition where another celebrated theatrical star will step into the iconic role. Ultimately, whether he is delivering a raw monologue on an off-Broadway stage, pouring his heart into a microphone in a quiet recording studio, or laying his soul bare across the pages of an upcoming memoir, this remarkable performer continues to remind the world that true artistry lies in the courage to remain an eternal student, stepping boldly into the unknown with the wide-eyed wonder of a permanent rookie.